Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Leadership Insights show. And today we're going to explore some leadership lessons from Nehemiah Lee. Um, Welcome to this fantastic show. And Nehemiah's here with us. And, maybe before we even start, tell us a bit about yourself because it's intriguing. The more we research about you, the more we find out you have a PhD, and we'll talk a little bit about this, your company's tagline and vision and so on. Very, very interesting sites. But give us a bit of a background to who is the man behind Nehemiah Lee.
Oh, thank you, Roshan. Thank you for inviting me for the show. I'm basically I'm a civil engineer, a kampong boy. Grew up
Which kampong?
In Kahang. It's a Kahang new village near Kluang.
Okay.
Yeah. So primary school there, secondary school in Kluang. And then I did my pre-university in Singapore, National Junior College. And I decided to come back to Malaysia to study in MU. And then, of course,
And then you set up, how do you get into entrepreneurship? I mean, you're an engineer, right?
Okay.
Well, tell us a bit about that story, because I think that's fascinating, right?
Actually, it's a calling from God. Most people felt called to become a pastor or a missionary. I felt called to go into business, although I'm not really I don't have exposure to doing business and all that, but the call in response to the call.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually there was a midlife crisis. I struggled with that calling for quite some time, about 6 months before eventually I took the plunge.
So it's kind of like your name, right? Because your name in the Bible is a civil servant, right? Nehemiah, who worked in the government, who had this call to go to leave the government and go out back to Jerusalem, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the name says something about the struggle and the calling that you had also.
Perhaps, yeah. And Nehemiah, actually, I think of him as a civil engineer. He's a very good project manager.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you study the book of Nehemiah, there's so many different things that he did, right?
Yeah, he went to the site, he did the survey first, division on labor, and he managed to rebuild the Jerusalem wall in 52 days without modern equipment.
Yeah. And so many obstacles, right?
Yes.
I mean, we talk about so many, Sanballat and all the different obstacles that came along the way.
Various kind of obstacles, even threatening his life.
Yep. And work one hand and defend the other hand. Right?
Build, fight, and pray. That's my motto.
All right. And speaking about mottos, right? Your tagline in your company is "We build integrity," right? And it's very unique, right? You build integrity, right?
Okay.
Or we are people of integrity. I can understand that, but we build integrity. Tell us a bit about what that sort of implies.
Okay, it implies firstly we have not completed the work yet. It's still work in progress, and because I'm in the business of building, I build retaining wall for highways. I build beams, bridges, and high-rise building. I'm involved in building, so that's why I choose the word build.
Okay.
Integrity is my calling. I was called to go into business not just to make money. That was the primary motive, but is to conduct business with integrity, so that my light so shine before men as a light and salt of the earth, that when they see my good work, they give glory to God. Yeah. So that is my calling.
Okay. It's very, very interesting. Build integrity.
Yeah, that's why I haven't finished building yet.
Okay.
I'm still, maybe in Malaysia, a lot of people know that I practice integrity in business, but I hope to expand the influence beyond the shores of Malaysia. So we are still in the process of building.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And we have not arrived. Actually, it's a big challenge. Constantly being challenged to
what are
compromise.
what are some of these challenges?
Let's say you are potentially going to get a big job, but there's a condition attached to it. And that condition means that you pay under counter or something. And will you take it? Maybe just once? It's tempting to take it.
Yeah.
Especially it's big, and then you're hungry, a lot short of projects, and then your company is struggling. So that's a challenge to say no.
Right.
But God is good. He's gracious. Even we lost projects quite a number of times. He compensates more than compensate.
Yeah. And you build integrity. I know that's your primary goal.
Yeah.
But you are very profitable as an organization. I mean,
Okay.
looking at some of your numbers, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have almost 70% of the Malaysian market share,
Yeah.
somewhat,
Yeah.
in your specific industry.
Yes.
And I mean, how do you do it? I mean, a lot of people will say it's either or, right? We
Mm.
either practice integrity and be a poor man, or sort of suffer for the Lord, sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have successfully built integrity and stood your ground and said, look, this is God's work, and I will do it God's way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've managed to be very successful in terms of capturing market share, in terms of being very profitable, and still glorifying God both ways, right?
Yeah.
In the way you work, but also in the success of your organization.
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce? What's the magic behind it? Is there, if there is?
Oh, if there's a single reason, actually, is by the grace of God. Yeah. Like I said, we walk away from project, got compensate. So
How does that work? I mean, practically, because I mean, sometimes people say walk away, but the project pipeline seems to dry up, right? How is it that somehow something happens that enables you to get another project and be successful?
well, we don't even know where it comes from. It's like man falling down that you just collect it. That's why I say it's grace of God. We realize that it is not me who is very capable, very good, that managed to get the project, but somehow, well, if you want to think of the reason, I also think that integrity is an asset. Most people think that it's the liability. Short-term wise, maybe you suffer losses. But long-term wise, it builds trust. And most other company, the bosses, the owners, they want a clean transaction.
Right.
Because if it's not so, their manager or their purchasing officer or what, a contract manager, have a deal with me, usually the contract will be at the expense of the owners of that company, you see, or the government, if it's a government official. So most owners of company will like the deal between my company and his company on a clean basis. So, so long-term wise is an asset, but those want quick profit,
and then they suffer in the long term, right? I mean, with,
well, some
with,
of them
with
they
issues
just,
like 1MDB. I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen that, right?
Sure.
Where long term there is always a consequence for your action. Somewhat, I
Precisely.
think you said well. We had dinner with Idris Jala a couple of weeks ago
Yes.
at my place, and Idris always tells me this. He talks about you have certain factors to be successful in terms of transforming your organization, but
Yes.
there's one final factor. In fact, that's his first factor. Right? He talks about it. He calls it the divine intervention or divine interventions, and he says it's how when you do good or when you act good and when you help others, when you do things that are good, right? Somehow the good of the world will come back to you, and in his mind, God will bless you somewhat. And I think you're saying somewhat similar things, right?
Yes.
That keep doing good, and keep pursuing the sort of the pathway that you have decided. Somehow over time you will reap the rewards of that, right?
Yes. Yeah. In a way, I can sense God watching over me. Sometimes I desire that project very much. I lost it. And on hindsight, I realized actually, thankfully, I didn't get the job. Yeah. So God protects as well. God provides.
Right.
So our God is a wonderful God.
And sometimes we cannot understand why things happen in a certain way, but over the long term, I think now you've seen how sometimes it's about protection, sometimes it's not the right thing, sometimes it's to create the brand of integrity that's going to help you win in the long term.
Precisely.
Right? Absolutely.
I have the advantage of hindsight already. Certain thing I came to realize it only many years later.
Is there anything you do in your organization, the way you structure it, the way the practices inside your organization that helps you also enable your organization? Because sometimes there are bad apples in every organization, right? What are things that you do inside your organization to enable this success to be permeated across the organization, or this integrity?
Yeah, I think basically I have to build a culture of integrity and other core values. So let's talk about integrity. So in order to build that culture, we say the people we recruit, we want them to share the same value. So we particularly when interview, we ask them questions to tease out whether they really subscribe to the values or not. And so we just only not looking at competence of the person, but the character of the person. So that's the first time of sieving off. When they join the company, there is orientation process. They also gone through say, these are company core value, and you better subscribe to it. If you don't, you find yourself very awkward. And some actually came in because they need the job. They say everything yes. They come in, they find that they cannot fit, so they left. So that is the process. And also our valuation appraisal, integrity is one of the criteria. Yeah, what value is subscribed and you get points. So your bonus and increment also in a way tied to how you practice integrity. But the real test, the final test is when the rubber hits the road. Like for example, let's say I told you about the project. My manager will come and see me, says, boss, this job, the main contractor, the client, is already decided to award to us after negotiation. But here's a condition. The discount that we're supposed to give to the company, let's say 100,000, that discount, he says that he will award us the contract as the original sum before discount, and that discount we have to pay to another company. And we know the other company goes back to him. Then we realize bribery. So ask me for decision. Shall we take it or not? And it's quite a substantial job. And he's afraid that he make decision not to take it. And hey, why don't you take the job? So, but when I said no, because we discern that this is bribery, involved corruption, not clean, then that sends a very strong message that we don't just say it, but we really practice it.
Yep.
Yeah. The minute I say, for once we compromise because of for various reasons, we have not enough job, we need income and all those things. Then he knows that whatever you advertise and what you do is different story. So it breaks down already.
Yeah.
So building a culture of integrity, you need to practice it.
Yep. Yeah. And I think you say some great stuff, right? It's culture and also process, right? So you set up a process from recruitment, right?
Yeah.
Recruit, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because and you recruit for character, not just for competence, right? Because ultimately, I think most people fire people not for competence, they fire people for character. In most cases, we hire for competence and we fire for character.
We actually have
so why not?
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
of character,
when they
right?
come in, they compromise already.
Yeah. So that's process. But you also talk about walking the talk, because I think part of culture is, as leaders, our role is to embody that culture, is to walk it, to talk it, is to live it.
Yes.
And I think you I mean that's very practical, for every leader, right? To build a culture, we need to live that culture, we need to talk the culture, we need to walk the culture, and we need to be that culture.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about influence. You say integrity in business is an asset and not a liability. And you kind of stand firm from this. But have you actually seen a change for good in your industry? It's a tough industry, right? The property and construction and so on and so forth. And do you see, although the world says this, I know the ESG and this and that, we hear messages. But is that really translating into action in the world that you see? And if not, what can we do as the light and salt, the little lights and salts of the world, in terms of, I know what you're doing, but what other ways can we do this? But maybe the first question first.
Unfortunately, my own, I did not do any survey or whatever. Although every now and then people hear my testimony, they feel encouraged, and one or two says that, because I remember what you said, and I feel encouraged to do what is right. So those are some what do you call that? Some one or two incidences where people share with me that.
Right.
But how big is the impact? I am not sure. Firstly, secondly, of late actually because of the current very difficult business environment, I even sense that corruption level is got worse. Got worse.
True.
So very disappointing. So the second part of the question is, what can we do? Maybe you can help. Because I think this JLN has content and pushing out content, digital. Now there is an in thing, and you can reach very much wider audience,
Yeah.
perhaps we can spread our
Messages,
messages more widely, and then share encouraging narratives, stories.
Yeah.
That will
people
probably
who
help.
have stood firm
Yeah.
in these very volatile times or
Yes.
very tough times. But I think you said it right. Because the level of corruption in the country has significantly increased,
Mhm.
many people and there's tough challenge. Many people feel compelled to take those deals, right?
Yeah.
Because hey, I have to cari makan, right? I mean,
I'll survive. Yeah.
and,
Always they
and,
say
and it
the term
becomes that
survive,
excuse, right?
but yeah, survival is at a
Yeah.
very different level.
Yeah, and we know historically people like Daniel and so on, had all the luxuries, but they still said no, and I'm going to be vegetarian. I mean, there is, and like you said, right, that dependence on God still becomes a very powerful, even more challenging, in times like this.
Yes.
But let's talk about it. These volatile times, right?
Yeah.
Very, lots of businesses and crises, lots of business closed down. I mean, I know for us, we had to take a whole bunch of loan and
Yes.
loan every year, is taking loans just to keep ourselves sustainable and running, and things were getting slightly better. I think the last couple of months and yesterday in a couple of conversations with CEOs, they are saying it's looking gloomy again. The sort of outlook in our country and across many places in the world.
Yeah.
What's your take on what's happening in the world, and what should we be doing, businesses specifically, right? I mean, as we face these challenging times, to continue to be businesses of integrity, to continue to stand firm and be salt and light, but yet be able to be sustainable and hopefully profitable, so that we can continue to permeate our influence in the world. Yeah.
Well, I think this Black Swan event, I think probably one of the blackest I've ever experienced. It's not just only pandemic, pandemic compounded by now Ukraine war, and then there's US-China trade war, and of course, incompetent or corrupted government doesn't help. Not business friendly because of their ulterior motive. So all these things combined together create a perfect storm of trouble, challenges. So I have not experienced such. I have gone through Asia financial crisis, global financial crisis. This is more global and global financial crisis, and so many things is disrupted. Of course, not just economy, in lives is disrupted and all that. So and what is the next part of your question? Sorry,
no. I mean, so I mean, is there any
how we
advice you
going
want to
to
give?
how are we going to survive?
Yeah.
I think
So what should we be doing? I mean, as business owners and business leaders, what should we be thinking about?
I think again back to dependence on God. I mean, that is the number one first thing. But that one is very general, specifically. Other than that, the hard work still a very good principle to have. It can never be substituted. Hard work. A lot of people, you read about overnight success, but behind the overnight success, there are many nights of burning midnight oil we don't know. Only we see them when they are successful. So hard work is essential, but together with hard work, we see in times like this, we need to build tenacity, resilience. Hard work alone not sufficient. We need perseverance. Perseverance means that when you fall, when you fail, when you lose money, you still get up and continue a journey. Because the minute you admit failure,
you're gone.
You're gone already. But as long as you don't admit it, you don't give up, you say that I'm going to stand up and walk again, there's a chance of success. That's why the common saying is that failure is the mother of success. So perseverance is the key thing. Perseverance plus hard work, you build tenacity and resilience. And of course, there are many other things you have to do right. And for us, over the years, because we are very conservative in our management of finances, we have reserved to carry us the difficult time. And thankfully, we hope and we pray that a better times will come back. Anyway, many things are all cyclical.
And speaking of cyclical, I think one of the things that's quite interesting for me is that, if I look back in the previous World War I, World War II era, right? It was actually the era before that, about 20 years before that, from 1890 to about 1915, right? We had aeroplanes come in, we had cars, we had electricity, light bulbs. I mean, it's a great time of innovation.
Yep.
But a great time of innovation actually led to World War One, Great Depression, World War Two. And it's quite interesting that similarly, we've seen a great innovation with digital, physical changes, some biological changes, and everything's happening.
Yeah.
But it's leading to confusion, war, and so on. And I think part of it is we may be in this transitionary time, just like 20s to 1945. People don't understand the new environment. And because when you don't understand what you do, you fight, you go crazy, and so on. And I think when you say hard work, I think you're spot on, because you need to be understanding. We work hard to try to understand the context of the age.
Mhm.
Then you'll be able to see where your light needs to be shined and be able to go where the path that is kind of laid out for you. So I kind of I really agree that hard work is so critical, but sometimes we don't know where to zoom in on that hard work, right? Now, when you talk about leadership, right? And you will say, I know you many times, I'm not that leader type, but you've built an organization, you've grown an organization, you've built processes to hire right people, you've built culture. What sort of what's your take on leadership, and what advice would you give other leaders in terms of growing their leadership, their capacity, and their ability? Because some, like you said, earlier, you said some people are made to be fast, some are slow, some are made to talk, some are made to listen. So, and we all made for, with different skills and strengths and capabilities.
Yeah.
But everybody's a leader, right? Everybody can be a leader.
Yes.
Tell us your philosophy of leadership.
Well, firstly, leadership is very critical for any organization or even country. Nation rise and fall with a leader, and I've lived through. Now I'm 69, and I used to study in Singapore. I come back to study and work in Malaysia. You see why Singapore become the first world nation. We are still in doldrum because of leadership. Singapore has Lee Kuan Yew. Malaysia, the longest prime minister is Mahathir. Both are very capable men, outstanding intelligence and ability to make it happen. But what's the main difference between the two?
Corruption.
Integrity. One lacking, one has. And that makes all the difference. So it goes to show that leadership with the right moral character is very essential. Rise and fall of a nation, rise and fall of an organization. So to me, leadership is very important. And I'm constantly trying to learn about leadership. Yeah. And still ongoing learning journey for me. So I forgot the second part of the question.
No, just advice to leaders, like
yeah. So it's
To
good to continue to upskill, hone your leadership, learn from anybody you can, and you run an organization called Leaderonomics. Wow, I think that is a great service to many people, which you have to coach them, train them, educate them. I think that's a great, important contributor to society, to any organization. Yeah, and you don't have to be a great leader of big organization. I think John Maxwell says leadership is influence. You influence. If you're a mother of 2 children, how you bring up the children?
It's your influence to the world.
It's your influence to the world, and they are potentially the leaders of future.
Absolutely.
So each of us have our different areas of influence. We are called to be faithful, to be a good example of a leader.
Fantastic. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the floor. We have a comment from Rachel Chow that says, great show, Nehemiah. So you've got a big fan there.
Thank you.
And I think there's Ray Wong has a question, and he says, how do you control the integrity among your staff, especially in construction? I think you did mention a little bit in terms of the hiring, and then the KPIs. Is there other things that you do in terms of managing your staff to ensure that integrity is upheld all the time?
Well, we cannot be 100% for sure how they make decisions sometimes, and we have to discipline some. Some get away with warning. I try to give people a second chance, but they are serious ones, and he knows exactly what he shouldn't be doing, but doing it, we have to ask him to leave. So that also is very strong. You see, carrot and stick, the stick is also very powerful. Sometimes more powerful than fear is more powerful than love, So that is how we practice that. And like I said earlier, the example is important as well. So if the Chinese saying, 上不正则笑, that means top is crooked, bottom show crooked. So the leadership, again, very important.
Yep, absolutely. We've got one more question from Sophia. Let me pull that question up. It says, how do you promote a culture of integrity in your organization? So again, it's pretty much culture related.
Yeah, culture, right? I think culture is over a period of time. So the other thing I didn't mention to you that we do, we have a staff meeting or town hall meeting once in every 2 months. And all the staff will come, and then we have meals together. And usually we encourage, in fact, we appoint anybody on the staff to share about what does it mean, the value of integrity to you.
Wow.
How do you understand integrity?
And this is every town hall you do this?
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the core values, we share about core value, like teamwork and other things we put it out. So if your integrity, they will talk about what does it, how do you understand integrity? What do you mean? And in your place of work, in your position, you are a dispatch boy or you are administrator or you are project manager. How do you practice that? And what will be the consequence if you don't practice that? These are the key points for them to share. So that also helps to communicate about our stand on integrity. So recruitment process, appraisal, and sending the same message, and also example and disciplinary action. All this will help to build the integrity. And we also have a certain framework. Even our supplier has to comply with our integrity practice.
So across the board, from
all the stakeholders,
inputs and outputs.
Yeah,
fantastic. I think one more question from Amanda William, who says, could you share with us a story of how you had to trust God despite of uncertainties in the situation you kind of feared or faced? Was there a specific situation where things were really bad and you had to just trust God for it in this uncertainty?
Yeah. Okay. People don't quite like to talk about failure. We did have one. It's a wall that collapsed, failed.
Wow.
Yeah. Because
after you built it up, it just collapsed.
We built up almost to completion. And then it was a very severe rainfall intensity, 1 in 100-year rainfall. This is in Johor. Many places flooded, including Bukit Kota Tinggi.
Right.
Kota Tinggi, Tinggi also flooded up to roof level. So our wall also almost submerged, and because of the water pressure behind the wall and the foundation sheared off, it failed. So that's very serious because our reputation at stake, and then that means we cannot hand over the project on time. There is penalty. Every single day delay is a few $1,000s. And to review, it takes time. And to make matter worse, that was built for a supermarket where it's a parking lot. They couldn't open on time because we are late. And they are threatening to charge us the LED, the loss of profit on us because they cannot open on time because we cannot hand over on time. So all of this compounding problem, we get a consultant to investigate, to come up with a report. It says that, well, they have rainfall gauges and then to illustrate that this is exceptional event. And in insurance terms, they call it act of God, like a disaster like that. Yeah. So it is not due to the design or construction failure or workmanship whatsoever. So that appeared to vindicate us. We submit our claims to insurance. Insurance sent another forensic consultant.
Yeah.
He came out with a different report.
Oh, wow.
And says that, well, this is due to workmanship problem. To me, he did not do a proper job. Like, take some photograph. He didn't even do a proper soil test. He said, oh, this one got clay, got sand and all that. And because you have some clay, some sand, the workmanship is the issue. That's why you failed. Yeah. So, two different reports. One for us, one against us. We are in dilemma. And our subcontractor is pressuring us to, or we say that the insurance company's report is inadequate. He didn't do proper test.
Right.
My subcontractor says that, hey, he's hinting you need to pay him, then he will do another report. He's basically saying that also. He said that, well, you want me to do further investigation, I need to be paid.
Yeah.
So, but we treat that as, I think it's in a way bribery to get the right report. So we did not. And meanwhile, we sit and wait with uncertainty, our reputation at stake, all these things. But really have to trust God. Nothing else we can do already. Nothing else we can do. Without us knowing, the client whom we are supposed to hand over the project appoint another consultant. This third consultant concur with our consultant. So because of that, we rebuild the wall. We are paid for the second wall. That means we are paid twice. We did not have to pay our lady. And the clients, they themselves also got issue with the approval.
So there was a delay
anyway. So we are, I mean, God really, this is God working
right?
That vindicated us, save our reputation, and become profitable. Not just we are paid twice for one project. So this is a story of how God's grace worked in a wonderful way that we cannot expect. But it dragged over a period of almost 12 months. So during this time, what do we do? Anxious. I mean, you have faith in God is one thing, but still some anxiety. We do not know what is the eventual outcome.
Fantastic. Well, Amanda, that's a great story for you. And so, as we wrap up today's session, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned is that leadership is critical. And you talk about the importance of building your leadership and so on. But leadership without morality or leadership without character is pointless. Because you can have Adolf Hitler who can galvanize a whole nation to do, it's great leadership, right? Convince a whole nation to go to war. But because there's no moral fiber in him, it was all wrong, right? Versus a Mother Teresa who can galvanize so many people to come and volunteer at her orphanage. So leadership is critical, but it has to be coupled with moral character, and it has to be coupled with morality and not just intellect. So I think that's a huge lesson. And I think your story reinforced that as you do the right thing, the world or God ensures that the right thing is given back to us. So Nehemiah, thank you so much. Really appreciate this conversation. It's always great to have a great conversation. So you've heard it here, Nehemiah Lee from Nehemiah Group of Companies, the chairman of Nehemiah Group of Companies. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be back next week at the same time, same place, Leadership Insights. See you next week.
Thank you very much.